Hello, Douglas Long and Sani Navaratnam again. And today we want to talk about, in terms of leadership and how organizations function, whether people actually look into the long term. Are they thinking about things in the future when they're making decisions now? Or are they sitting making decisions now with just no thought at all? Okay, I've got a problem, I'm going to take the shortest and the quickest and the easiest solution to it. So we see that, and I think we talked a little bit earlier about the issues around how organizations deal with tough economic times by taking a hatchet. And Douglas made the mention about today's solutions being tomorrow's problems. So Douglas, would you like to expand a little bit on that?
Yes. If you look at most of the things that have happened on an international scale over the last few years, we find that organisations who have acted with the best will in the world in accord with their political or philosophical bent then wind up having a problem arising out of their previous solution. We could go back to the Second World War, where the Americans effectively mobilised what became the Viet Cong against the Japanese. We could go into Afghanistan and look at how the Americans again mobilised and worked with what is now effectively the Taliban against the Russians. Now, I don't want to go into the rights and wrongs of either of those, but it's where a solution was found, and here obviously on a macro scale, that later created all sorts of problems. And we see it in organisations. One researcher, Elliot Jarks, made the point many years ago that people have ability to deal with different time spans, and that for most people they can think of about 3 months, and they can deal with issues for about 3 months. But if you're running an organisation, you need to have a longer time span than that. You need to be able to consider the ambiguity and the complexity involved for a greater period than that. In fact, Jarks would say that for most organisations, the people towards the top need to have at least a 5-year time span of capacity, and if you're running a big organisation, then you need to have somewhere far closer to a 15 or 20, and if you're running a country, then you need to have an awfully lot longer view than that. What he's meaning by this is that we need leaders who can seriously look at the implications of what decisions are today, that they can understand the ambiguity, they can understand the uncertainty, and so they seek to promote and work on solutions that will minimise the negative impacts in the long term while maximising the positive impacts. And unfortunately, because most of the people running our organisations and most of our politicians operate from a very short time span of capacity, that isn't done. The cynics would say that a businessman and an organisation has a time span capacity of about 3 months. In other words, the reporting time from the stock exchange. The cynics would say that a politician has a time span of the distance between the phone call from one lobbyist to the phone call from another lobbyist. Now that's pretty nasty and pretty cynical, and I don't think it's quite the truth. But I think it's the fact that we see so much of this boom and bust, so much of the almost short-term expediency coming in, such as chopping staff to reduce costs, that make people so cynical about that. And we don't need it. And third-generation leadership enables us to get around that by helping us understand and deal with ambiguity and complexity, and helping us develop our time spans of capacity.
In fact, I think those sentiments are echoed by Jim Collins in his seminal work, Good to Great and Built to Last, where he described what he called the fifth level executive, or the fifth level, level 5 leadership. And it was very much about being able to see a vision in the future and work towards something, rather than sitting here what we call band-aids all the time.
Yep.
Let's just band-aid it for the moment. I've seen that many times. I've watched a very prominent organization in Australia. I came in very much during this major revamp that they were doing, they were facing enormous competition from two other major giants, and they decided that they will invest, that the way to solve it was to invest $100 million on a major computer overhaul. And they did that, and I came in about 4 or 5 months before the computer systems were coming in, and I looked at that and said, this isn't going to solve your problem, this is actually going to make it worse. Because as soon as you look beyond, and you thought about, rather than just looking at the current situation, but looking into a stretch, you realize that there was far more complex situations going on which they hadn't dealt with.
Yep.
And true enough, I quickly got dismissed. Shut up and go
Know
away.
the feeling.
And very quickly, the company went bust. Within about 3 years after that, they were gone because they had hedged their bets on this one strategy. They had invested a huge amount of resources, and boom, it went crash. It's a very common thing, and it seems to be more common than otherwise, and it's getting worse. I don't know.
Yeah, but we paper it over. We pretend not to notice it, or we let the government come and bail us out, rather than grappling with the issues and dealing with the root causes.
Yes. I think it would be really interesting if leaders were paid by their results into the future, and they had a fund which kept removing all the monies that they got paid earlier for the bad decisions that they had made. Might be interesting. That might be a way of thinking differently. So there is another interesting aspect, and perhaps you have got some thoughts on how you would see a leader developing vision, developing a way of thinking about the future in everything that they do today. And maybe you've got some thoughts and some experiences to share. So please comment. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you.